joining us here in the Media Center at Bristol Dragway is Tony Stewart and Matt Hagan, who's making his way to the stage for this weekend's Super Grip Thunder Valley Nationals. Matt, the reigning funny car world champion. Tony making his...
I look tanner than you. I mean, that white makes you look pale. You okay? You doing all right?
I've been standing in the sun for an hour and a half signing autographs. I'm burning up. Sorry.
Tony making his top fuel debut here in Bristol. Tony, to start with you, just obviously a long history here just racing at the facility, Bristol overall. How excited are you to make your top fuel debut here at Bristol Dragway, obviously a historic facility in its own right?
I'm excited about it. I remember coming here the first time with Leah, and it was just kind of cool. And I'd heard about it. I hadn't even been to the drag strip yet, but I'd heard a lot about it, and then finally getting the opportunity to come and see it firsthand and just see the landscape around it. It's just as a super cool layout. The atmosphere is awesome here. Fans have been awesome today, so I'm very, very excited about getting to run here finally today.
So we'll start with questions. Start with Bobby.
So, Tony, it doesn't take a genius to figure out you've been having more fun drag racing out here. Are you looking to expand your footprint out here?
Right now, I'm just trying to make sure I pay my bills on time. So, I don't know. Leah has some interesting ideas what she wants to do with the whole program when she gets back. So I think it's a terrible idea, but Matt and I have different ideas, and we like our ideas. So we'll see what happens as time goes on. But it's kind of fun to really not have a plan right now. I mean, the plan literally is Matt does what he does in the funny car, and I'm just filling in for Leah till she's ready to get back in the car. And at that point, we'll figure out what's next.
Tony, you've been so successful in everything you've driven, and how important was it for you to go back to the top alcohol car a few weeks ago and win at Indianapolis?
I don't know it was important, but it was as far as for anything other than I didn't want to sit for 2 weeks and not race. I mean, I'm back to doing what I used to do, and that's if I got an open weekend and I got an opportunity to go drive for somebody, I'm going to go drive what I can drive when I can drive it. So it kind of made me feel good just to kind of be back to the old me and go back to having fun again.
So last year, around this time, that Leah's team had started to finally get their foot set on the ground, and they started running away and having that bid for the championship. Last week at Epping, you had a similar thing after what happened in Chicago with the first round exit, number 16 qualifier come in, number 8 qualifier, and get to actually win some rounds. How important was that for you and your team to get that weekend down, and then coming into this, seeing that you're kind of having a similar season to what they had last year going into the summer?
Yeah, you're right. It's very, very similar, I feel like. And I probably was more excited than anybody at the end of the weekend. I mean, the guys kind of had their chins down because we lost a close one to Doug. But, you know, we've made 4 solid qualifying runs. I mean, the first one, we knew that we had it set up to be soft, and it wasn't going to be a fast lap, but it was going to at least get down, hopefully. And, you know, the last 3 trips to that track, that they hadn't made it down the first run. So that was the goal first round. Had 3 solid rounds after that of qualifying, and you know, almost went to the semis. So I'm excited about it. I'm excited about the progress. We had an Indy test that I feel like showed some things that we were looking for, and so the crew chiefs were happy when we left, and then had a good weekend to follow it up. So I feel like we're on the right track, but it's just baby steps. But we're creeping in that direction.
And then for Matt, you know, coming off Chicago with the win, you had a decent weekend back out at Epping. Coming into these summer months, you're going to be going to Bristol, like Seattle, Norwalk, and everything in between. With how strong your car has been early in the season compared to the struggles you faced earlier in the seasons last year, where is that team at now, and how helpful is that going to be when you step closer to that countdown, knowing that you already have probably the top car in the class right now?
Well, I mean, I don't know about top car in the class. There's a bunch of heavy hitters out there, but I think we're in grow mode right now. I think it's one of those things where we're trying some stuff. We have some opportunity to, you know, if we can throw that first dart and get in the program and be solid somewhat, you know, top half, you try to, you know, take a couple of those runs and experiment, do some different things. I know Dickie's wanting to try some things in the bell housing, some different things like that, and, you know, I'm just kind of be consistent in doing the same thing I'm doing so that when we do make changes that they can say, oh, it's not our driver that's messing up, or, you know, no different than, you know, if you can be, you know, going after the tree up there every time and you know, we change something on the car, if your reaction time is different or just different things. So I think, you know, Tony Schumacher a long time ago, he says, be a machine, you know, and that kind of like set with me is like do the same thing every time, be consistent, and then you're the biggest variable in the car. So when you're in grow mode and trying to learn and trying to, obviously be a big heavy hitter out there and find new things that we can come up with, you have to be probably the most consistent, almost like you're in countdown championship mode, because you're, like I said, you're a big variable. So as it gets hotter, as it gets greasier, it's going to be more challenging for everybody. I think that and anybody that follows drag racing, it's easier to make these cars run faster than it is to pull them back, So it's challenging coming out here to 130-degree racetrack, and, the tunnel over here in the left lane is super challenging and lots of bumps. So, the biggest thing I want to do is put on a great show for these fans. There's so many friends and families and, folks that are wearing Hagan T-shirts and people that are cussing me and hate me, that are out there that, you want to put on a good show, man. That's what at the end of the day, we're here to put on a show. We're showmen. Forrest told me a long time ago, he's like, kid, you don't get on TV much, And I was like, well, yeah, man, I'm young, not ain't one of many races. He's like, no. He's like, you got to roll around and act like you're on fire. He said, you get on TV. And I said, he figured it out, man. He's a showman. So that's the biggest thing we want to do is give the fans what they paid for. They work really hard for their money, and this is like their vacation. They camp out here, they come out, they do all the stuff, and we definitely don't want to see any smoke fest and qualifying, and we want to go out there and run as hard as we can. But like I said, I think you have to throw the dart the first run and then kind of go out there and make decisions after that. If we always smoke the tires the first run, we're always behind the 8-ball. We're always trying to play catch up. We're backing up instead of moving forward. And so we're always, every time we go out there first run and unload it and go down the racetrack, I always feel pretty good about the weekend.
Matt, you talked about the consistency and you mentioned the bumps. Of course, they've done a lot of work, like you mentioned, on the track, and I know it's an unfair question in a way because you've not been down the track much, but how do you anticipate maybe that changing the racing and funny cars this weekend?
Well, I think it makes the driver earn his paycheck, At the end of the day, we were here in the fall 2 years ago, and no one went down the left lane, and, we had right lane choice, and we picked right lane, and I thought for sure we were going to win first round, and I saw J.R. Todd coming by me halfway sideways, and they figured it out, and it just it makes everybody work a little bit harder. These Bruton Smith tracks and facilities are amazing. The Smith family, they do a great job and putting on a great show, but, at the end of the day, you have a tunnel out there that you can't do a whole lot with, and it's just going to be there, So I think as a crew chief and as a driver, we both sit down and talk about it and get mentally prepared for it, but it's really kind of like you're looking at probably running 410 out there today, instead of 380s, 390s, so it does affect the facility, it does affect the track, it affects the show, so as easy as you like to say, hey, just fix it, sometimes it's harder to do than just that. Tony is a track owner, so I'm sure he gets that all the time. Hey, just fix it, man, you know what I mean? But it don't quite work like that all the time.
Kelly Crandall, Racer.com. Matt, coming into this year, there was a lot of talk, as there has been the last couple of years, about how competitive the funny car class was going to be this year.
Yeah.
Is there someone that's not getting enough attention, or are there things that have already stood out? are there people, or are there things that have stood out so far that have been surprising or impressing?
Yeah, instead of they always talk about the big three or heavy four hitters. There's 6 or 8 now. You know what I mean? And it's just it's incredible how competitive the class is. Trying to get these little points in qualifying and going out here and really trying to win a race is just you're fighting for it every inch of that racetrack. You know what I mean? And it's just one of those things where Tony lost a race last week in top fuel. By 2 inches. And I've lost one already in a 4-wide by less than that. I think it was a couple inches on the 4-wide. And I keep telling Tony, I said the way we change that is you let go of the brake at the start line a little bit more. You just roll it in a little bit farther. So it shortens the racetrack up. But dragster guys, they have a little bit more couth than we do. So we play a lot of games up there on the start line, I guess. But there's a lot of cars that are out there that are heavy hitters. You got J.R. Todd. You got Austin Prockett. He's doing a great job. He's a great lever, good driver. He's not out here running over stuff. But Blake Alexander is one. You know what I mean? He's a kid that's up and coming, and he's we went to the same college together and everything else, and he probably finished higher than I did, so he's smarter, so he deserves a little bit more love. But at the end of the day, I think that there's going to be 5 or 6 cars in this hunt at the end of the year instead of 2 or 3, and it's just going to be a dogfight out there. So I think we have to come into this season through the summer, kind of trying to scoop up as many wins as we can. You look at Austin, he's only won 1 race, and he eats up all these little bonus points out there, and I don't know if he's in the lead or close to it, or, I think he is leading, but End of the day, it's because they go out there and they qualify hard and they run hard and they pick up all the little points, and it's almost made up for a race, a round win, here and there. So I think we need to focus and do a better job of doing that on the weekend as well.
Tony, are you at the point yet where you want like the learning and the adjustment to be over and just like, okay, give me a round win, give me another round win, like give me a race win? Now, have you gotten to that point yet where you're getting hungrier to get closer?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we don't show up just to say we got to drive these things. We want to be successful and we want to win rounds and we want to win races. So, yeah, it's but it's part of the process of learning. It's like I mentioned at the beginning of the season, I weigh tiny bit heavier than my wife does, and so it's an adjustment for the team to figure out how to figure out what the clutch wants, what the car wants to get me going. And I'm not, by all means, not the heaviest guy in the class by any means, but
I am for sure.
yes.
I'm working on that, man.
I wasn't gonna
me
say
and this
anything,
guy
but he
named
said it
Treadmill
first.
we're getting close here lately, so I'm getting to know him a lot more.
Yeah, but I do want to. Yeah, we want to go. I mean, it was the first time Doug and I got to race last week, and we both came back from the USAC days, and I mean that was a pride thing for both of us to be able to run with each other finally. So, you don't want to lose against anybody, but the goal is to come out and try to win events and win rounds to get there. So, I've been hungry from day one for that, because the more runs I get and the next round I get to go to, that's just more experience I'm gaining and the more I'm learning. So, it's they kind of go hand in hand, so to speak.
Jerry Jordan kicking the tires. I'm going to try not to get you in trouble, but you said you're filling in for Leah, which we know, but does her plan include you in a race car?
My wife has a lot of interesting ideas that she likes to talk about. We'll cross that bridge when we get there. She's had a couple different ideas. Matt normally gets one idea and he just runs straight,
Railroad it all the way
to the end on that idea. So he's got some, but there's a lot of variables in the equation. So right now I'm just focused on driving the car right now. Supporting him in the funny car and the whole program, and just trying to make our program stronger and better each week. And when we get to that, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But yeah, there's a lot of. I normally am the one that come up with the bad ideas, but there's a lot of ideas that are in the air. Let's put it that way. So.
Who's better, by the way, you or him on the table?
On the what?
Pool table. Who's better?
Oh yeah, I kick his butt on the pool table.
He brought out his own pool stick. I was like, oh shit.
Ask him who beat him.
Keep my money in my pocket.
He's better than both of us. That's why he's asking.
Oh, okay. Well, there we go. I'll stay away from you too.
How I beat you is how he beats me.
Fashion good old whooping, huh?
Yeah.
Tony, going back to what you said about racing Doug last week, how many of those moments have you had so far this year? Because I think you've lined up against Antron at one point. I think you've left on Justin early in the season. Are you having those moments where you take in those big names on this side of things that you get to line up against?
Yeah, and I guess, Gainesville, we went up against Justin first round, and I saw the matchup. I'm like, you got to be kidding me. I got to run against the best lever in the class in my very first round of eliminations. But, literally, if you're going to win these things, you got to beat the best out there. And like Matt said, I mean, I think since I started coming here in 2020 with Leah, I mean, the top fuel class is getting stronger and stronger, and there's probably 8 cars that can go out and win a race on a given day. So it's if you're going to be in that upper echelon of the group, you're going to have to race against these guys at some point during the day, and you're going to have to beat them. So it's kind of like I kind of welcome it now, because if you get a round that technically is supposed to be an easier round, you cherish it, but you kind of, it makes you feel good, like Doug and I mean, to leave on Doug. I mean, Doug's in the top 2 or 3 levers in the class this year, and so to be able to be on time and be a little bit ahead of him off the line and not be chunked in there. I mean, I was thin and did what I was supposed to do, but to do that gives me confidence and gives me a lot of pride that I'm gaining on it and learning and starting to figure it out. I mean, there's a lot of things that haven't happened that I'm going to have to go through and learn on still, but some of these things are starting to become second nature, and that makes me feel a lot better about it.
And one last thing, can you give your side of the story? Because I've heard Leah's side of when you technically lost naming rights to the team and she now has merchandise.
Yeah. Well, what had happened was we might have over-celebrated on his championship, and by the time I got back, there were 15 people piled into Leah's lounge, which is kind of like the crew chief lounge, but in her trailer. And she had her practice tree in there, and I had slightly overserved myself and went toe-to-toe against my wife, but the bet was that if she beat me, that she got naming rights to the team and got to change it from TSR to LSR. And so if you're very creative and you go in our pit, look by the door, and there's an LSR decal, and now she has her own merchandise for it. So luckily she hasn't changed the names on the trailer, but yeah, I'm hearing about it weekly. More people are picking up on what is this LSR, and then I have to tell the story of how I got my butt kicked by my wife, which is not a fun part of the story to tell. But yeah, we had fun. We you know, it's awesome to be able to celebrate our first championship and you know, have a big time with everybody in the pit afterwards. And where winning championships before, you went to the media center for an hour and a half, you did photos, and everybody's gone and left and went home by the time you get done with everything. So it's nice to be able to have that camaraderie in the pit area. But trust me, there's enough people in the pro pit that know, and some of them were there, and there's enough of them that know about it that I get picked on a lot about it. So I've learned to not bet against my wife on anything anymore, at least nothing that has consequences. So. Seriously? I don't remember that part. Yeah. I have no doubt. That's great news.
Hey, Tony, you mentioned racing Doug, and I know this was 3 decades ago, but what's some of your best memories racing him in the old USAC series?
You know, it was weird because I bet I've physically talked to Doug more in the first year that I started hanging around the drag racing scene. I talked to Doug more in that first year than I did the entire time we raced sprint cars together. Doug was just kind of off on his own deal and, you know, just focused on his own program. But it's fun for us. I mean, we take a lot of pride in our upbringing and what we did to get here. And obviously Doug's name, I mean, it was inevitable he was going to end up here. But, you know, we had some fierce battles. I mean, he was unbelievable on the pavement. I mean, you go to the fast places, the Winchesters, the Salems, IRPs, anywhere that you went fast, he was really, really good at those tracks. And so it doesn't surprise me that he's running 330-mile-an-hour cars now and doing well at that. So it's, but we take a lot of pride in it. And it was fun because we hadn't qualified with each other. We hadn't lined up with each other at any point up to last weekend. So it was that was something that I was, you know, win, lose, or draw, it was going to be a cool moment for us together. And I'd like to have been on the other end of the finish, but at least we kept him honest.
I got one more. Force was in here earlier, and Proc was with him. So he wants to get into an IndyCar, and Force was joking maybe he might actually do that. Any recommendations for him to run the 500?
Who, John or
No,
Austin?
Austin, not John. Johnson. No.
My recommendation for John would be don't get in it. He doesn't have anything to prove. He's the GOAT, and he doesn't need to prove anything to anybody. Austin could, I mean, he ran his midget out of our shop at TSR for years. So I don't know. If he wants to do it, you got to follow your dreams. And I mean, I've learned in my career, don't ever say never. So if that's what he wants to do and gets an opportunity, I mean, we would obviously do what we could to help out the best we can. But I haven't been in a car for 13 years. Actually, more than that, it's been 23 years. So it's there's a lot of things that have changed in the sport, and especially in IndyCar racing, that I am totally clueless on now.
Well, you never know how serious they are, but it was definitely came up.
Well, I mean, I think we're talking about it now. I think we ought to have a big blast go out that Austin Proc wants to run the Indy 500 next year. So I like it. What's that? But Foyt's, I would make a phone call on his behalf. I don't know. That guy's a little more hard-headed than I am, even the big boss over there. So I don't know how that goes over, but it'd be fun to see him have the opportunity. Yeah, he's got cars.
All right, any other questions? All good? All right. Thanks, Matt. Thanks, Tony.
Thank
Good
you,
luck
guys.
this
Thank you,
weekend.
guys.
Appreciate it.
All right, there's the checkered flag. Great job, driver.